For years, an epic war raged between humanoids blessed by the god of light and demons empowered by the god of darkness. After endless bloodshed, a band of heroes finally storms the Demon Lord's castle to end it once and for all. But just before the throne room, the team is ambushed by a nasty demon. Theren tells Kyle and Urza to press on while he plays solo tank. They nod, knowing full well Theren isn't walking out of this one. Once inside the throne room, disaster strikes. Shadowy spheres of dark matter rain down from above. Kyle tries to block them, but it's too much. At the last second, Urza dives in to protect him and is completely disintegrated. R.I.P. Magic MVP. With dramatic timing, the Demon Lord appears, ready to finish things. Enraged, Kyle charges in like an angry bull, only to dodge another barrage of dark blasts by hiding behind a pillar. He quickly realizes this isn't just any attack, it's elimination, an unblockable spell that erases anything it touches. Yeah, not ideal. Kyle knows he won't land a hit unless he risks everything. So, he unleashes the full power of the magic gem in his sword. The result? One epic stab straight through the Demon Lord, who goes kaboom. Victory. Except Kyle's sword is wrecked, and he's fatally injured. He saved the world but lost everything. His friends, his family, his home. He collapses, ready to embrace the sweet release of death, until the Demon Lord's magic gem suddenly goes haywire. With no one controlling it, it could blow up the entire planet. So, barely alive, Kyle crawls to the gem and grabs it. Flash! He wakes up in his childhood bed. Totally confused, Kyle checks the window. His hometown, burned to ash in the past, is standing tall and peaceful. He's stunned. Then his childhood friend Layla walks in, worried. Kyle freezes, speechless. Is this real? A dream? Hallucination? Doesn't matter, he's just happy to see her. So he hugs her tight. Layla, flustered, asks what he's doing, but Kyle is too caught in the moment. She tries to escape, but he holds on, and they both tumble onto the bed in a very non-platonic position. The tension skyrockets. Problem is, they're not at that stage of the relationship yet. Layla's face shifts from red to furious. She punches Kyle so hard he does a triple flip midair. Now groaning in pain, Kyle gets scolded hard. She storms out, yelling something about warnings and emotional prep time. Lying there in agony, Kyle realizes something wild. That punch hurt. If this were just a dream, he wouldn't feel anything, right? He pulls back the covers, and there it is. The Demon Lord's magic gem glowing ominously. So yeah, whatever's going on, this dream just got a whole lot more complicated. Now certain this is reality, Kyle walks to the mirror to get a good look at himself and is shocked. He looks much younger than he did during the war. Even stranger, he clearly remembers suffering several fatal injuries during the battle with the Demon Lord. Yet now his body is perfectly healthy. His hometown is intact, and Layla is alive. With all this in mind, Kyle concludes that he must have somehow returned to the past, and the only clue he has is the Demon Lord's magic gem. Sure, the Demon Lord was absurdly powerful, but creating a spell that sends someone back in time, that's way beyond any magic Kyle knows. Suddenly, his stomach growls loudly. So off he goes to the kitchen. When Kyle walks in, he's stunned to see a full meal laid out for him. It doesn't take a genius to guess that Layla made it before she left. She used to do this all the time, especially since Kyle and his mom were too busy or too magically incompetent to cook anything edible. He pulls out a bowl, tastes the food, and is in heaven. It's been years since he had a proper meal. On the battlefield, survival meant choking down bland ration cubes in the middle of nowhere. A few minutes later, Theren strolls in, clearly looking for food. But once he sees all the empty plates stacked in front of Kyle, his face drops. The stew is gone. Every last drop. While Theren begins a passionate monologue about culinary betrayal, Kyle sits back, still trying to comprehend everything. Just hours ago, the two of them were fighting side by side against the Demon Lord. Theren had even stayed behind to buy him time. Now he's here, hungry and grumpy. Theren notices Kyle staring and asks if something's wrong. Kyle shakes it off and casually asks what year it is. Weird question, but Theren answers. It's the 24th of May, 2823. Also, Kyle's birthday. Theren says he'll forgive the feast theft just this once, but he's still starving. So he's heading to Leela's place to beg for food. He might even throw in a dramatic kneel if necessary. Pride doesn't matter when you're hungry. While Theren goes off to beg, Kyle stays in the kitchen thinking deeply. If he really has returned to the past, he needs to confirm some things, and there's only one person who can help. His mom. He He heads out to the shed and into the underground library, where she's likely buried in books. Sure enough, he finds her down there, nose deep in a tome. She's surprised to see him, since he never comes down at night, but he points out it's already morning, meaning she pulled another all-nighter. She apologizes, but Kyle isn't here to nag about sleep schedules. He tells her he has a question about magic theory. As one of the few archmages in the country, she's the perfect person to ask. She perks up and tells him to go ahead. Kyle asks if there are any known spells that can send someone back in time. Surprisingly, she says yes, though very little is known about them. Time magic is considered theoretical at best, and no mage is capable of actually casting it. The power required is simply too much. Even the greatest magician in history wouldn't be able to travel back more than a second. Kyle then asks if a magic item could make it possible. His mother thinks for a moment. Technically, if you had an item that could store enough energy over centuries, maybe. But it would take over 1,000 years to accumulate that much magic. Kyle presses further. What if someone used the forbidden right? Now his mom is alarmed. She demands to know where he heard about such a spell. Kyle lies and says he read about it in a book, and swears he'd never try it. She calms down and explains that the forbidden right allows someone to sacrifice life force in exchange for magic. It's dangerous and wildly unethical. Even if someone were mad enough to attempt it, the power still wouldn't be enough. You'd need to sacrifice half the humanoid population on the continent just to get close. And even then, you'd need an artifact capable of storing that much power, which doesn't exist. Or at least it shouldn't. But suddenly, she remembers something. She flips through one of her ancient texts and stops at a page detailing the divine dragon's heart, a legendary gem said to have powered the ancient kingdom of Sorrows for thousands of years. When the gem's energy ran out, the kingdom fell. She tells Kyle that if such an artifact still existed, it could make time travel possible. It's believed the gem was lost over a millennium ago, but if it resurfaced in demon hands, everything makes sense. Kyle realizes the gem he took from the demon lord must be the divine dragon's heart, and the spell must have been set to activate upon the demon lord's defeat. But what still puzzles him is, why would the demon lord go back in time? Before he can think more, Layla walks in. Kyle immediately apologizes for the intense, awkward hug that morning. He explains he had a horrible nightmare and that she died in it. That sobers Layla up. She understands now and forgives him. She smiles at him. That smile almost breaks him. In the future, their village was the first to fall during the invasion. Layla died in the chaos, and Kyle swore to avenge her. But now here she is, alive, safe, smiling. Layla notices he's gone quiet again and asks if something's wrong. But Kyle is lost in thought. 3 years from now, everything burns. Everyone he loves will be gone, unless he changes that future. He clenches his fists. No matter what it takes, he'll change fate. He's not going to lose her or anyone again. Kyle knows he only has 3 years before the Great Cataclysm, so the very next day, he gets to work. He starts training by summoning a mental image of the Demon Lord and charging in. But after a few swings and a couple of blocks, reality hits. His body is weak. Like, embarrassingly weak. It makes sense. By this point in time, Kyle had been living the lazy life of a certified couch potato. His combat skills are trash. The one thing going for him? His magic stats seem to have carried over from the future. So, he tries buffing himself with speed and strength enhancements, and still eats dirt. His body simply can't keep up with his magic. Conclusion? He needs to train hard. Meanwhile, Layla and Theren are spying on him from the bushes. From their point of view, Kyle has been running around yelling at nothing and falling over all morning. Concern levels rising. Then Ela, his mom, shows up and asks what they're doing. They explain that Kyle's suddenly working out like a madman, which is weird considering just days ago, he couldn't care less about training. Layla thinks maybe he's doing it for a girl. This crushes Leela's hopes. If he hasn't confessed to her, then it must be someone else. Fueled by jealousy, she storms in and shakes Kyle so hard he throws up. Realizing she may have gone a bit overboard, she makes it up to him by cooking his favorite lunch. Though still a bit queasy, Kyle forgives her. Since everyone's gathered, he brings up a question that's been on his mind. How do you force entire nations to take action? Everyone's confused, kind of a weird topic for lunchtime. After thinking it over, Ela lists a few ways. Get the kings on his side, become a powerful priest, or rise to fame as a legendary hero. And if all else fails, grow a mustache and commit war crimes to get noticed. Kyle thanks her for the colorful options, but he needs to unite the nations in less than 2 years, and the only realistic path is to become a hero. So, he heads straight to his room and starts speed reading every book he can find. Knowing what's coming gives him an advantage. He knows which myths are real and which are garbage. Theren walks in and is shocked to see Kyle voluntarily studying. He flops on the bed and asks, "Are you seriously trying to become a hero? You know that's not a job you can just apply for, right?" Kyle nods. He knows. Normally, you become a hero by slaying a demon king or saving the world. But since he already did that once and is technically prequel era now, he needs to prepare ahead of time. Step 1. Strength. Step 2. Cash. Theren gives him a look. Money? That's not very heroic. But Kyle is dead serious. Heroes don't accept payment for good deeds, but gear and travel aren't free. So yeah, he's gonna need a stash of gold. On top of that, he plans to gain favor with important people to build his reputation. Basically, the hero version of networking. To Theren, this is starting to sound less like hero and more like politician. Kyle isn't done. He also says he needs one more thing: luck. Because heroes always show up at the perfect time, and sometimes that requires a little behind-the-scenes manipulation. Theren raises an eyebrow. "You're not planning to create disasters just to save people, are you?" Kyle quickly denies it, but admits he's not above using some underhanded tricks to meet his goals. "Yeah, I'm pretty sure heroes aren't supposed to say that," Theren mutters. But then, more seriously, he asks the big question: why do you want to become a hero anyway? Theren can tell that being a hero isn't Kyle's final goal, it's just a stepping stone. Curious, he asks what Kyle's real objective is. Kyle admits he does have a reason, but it's not something he can share just yet. So for now, Theren just has to trust him. The next morning, Kyle informs Hila that he'll soon be heading off on an adventure. She supports the idea. Exploring the world is important after all. She asks if he told his mom, and he says yes, earlier that morning. However, he hasn't told Layla yet. Since he'll be gone for a while, Hila suggests he take Theren along. Kyle had planned to ask him anyway, so he thanks her, but it's the first Theren's hearing of any of this. Later, Kyle finds Layla and tells her he'll be leaving in 2 days. She's clearly upset, but she doesn't want to stop him from chasing his goal. When she asks where he's headed, Kyle replies that his first stop is the royal capital. Mad. Once he gets what he needs there, the real work begins. Layla says she has a favor to ask, but Kyle already knows what it is. She wants to come with him. He quickly shuts her down, saying he wants her to stay somewhere safe. She's about to argue, insisting that she's been training with the Oracle Warriors and won't be a burden. But Kyle silences her with a kiss and promises she'll be the first person he visits when he returns. Flustered beyond words, Layla gives in, asking only that he not do anything reckless. He agrees. The next day, Kyle goes shopping for supplies and invites Layla to join him. While walking through town, Layla spots something unusual: an elf standing by one of the market stalls. Elves aren't common in this region, so she's curious. But Kyle? He's shocked. That's not just any elf, it's Urza, someone who loved him deeply in the future, and even told him her true name, Exis, a sacred secret among elves. So stunned by her presence, Kyle accidentally blurts out Exis, which immediately puts Urza on high alert. In this timeline, she has no idea who Kyle is, and no random human should know her true name. She reaches for her sword, ready to attack. Desperate to avoid a public elf slaying, Kyle grabs her arm and tries to calm her down, but she's not having it. With no choice left, he whispers her true name again, putting her to sleep through an ancient elven technique. Urza collapses into his arms. Crisis averted, not quite. Layla saw the whole thing. And from her point of view, Kyle just casually knocked out a random elf girl in the middle of the market, and is now possibly kidnapping her. Explaining this one is gonna be rough. Back at his house, Kyle tries to convince Urza she imagined him saying her name. Unsurprisingly, she's not buying it. Only her parents know that name, so she demands to know how Kyle learned it. But there's no easy way to say, "We dated in the future and you told me during a tearful romantic moment." She threatens to kill him just to be safe, but Kyle pleads for time and promises to explain eventually. Urza, understandably, finds it hard to trust someone who casually drops her sacred name in public. So, Kyle makes an offer. He'll form a binding contract with her. This kind of contract is typically between humans and spirits, but in rare cases it can bind two people. The terms? Kyle must never reveal or misuse Urza's true name. If he does, instant, painful death. Urza is taken aback by how seriously Kyle takes it. She agrees, but says she can't form a contract until the next full moon, which is 3 weeks away. So, until then, she's sticking to Kyle like glue. Problem is, Kyle is leaving tomorrow. So now, Urza is forced to tag along to keep an eye on him. The next day, with bags packed, the team is ready to set off. Kyle says goodbye to his mom, and just as things are settling, Lee shows up. Turns out she's coming too, not because she trusts Kyle, but because she doesn't trust him to travel alone with Urza after that very dramatic elf encounter. The group finally sets off on their journey, and Theren almost immediately starts flirting with Urza, clearly taken aback by how pretty she is. But Urza shuts it down fast. She's not part of the party. She's just tagging along because she needs to stay near Kyle until they form a contract. Not that anyone is listening to her. Since Urza is with them now, Kyle says there's no need to go to the royal capital right away. Instead, they're heading for the Scarred Mountains to find the Magic Queen's labyrinth. Theren isn't thrilled. He thinks it's a wild goose chase. The labyrinth is legendary and supposedly so huge no one's ever made it through to the treasure. But Kyle reassures them. He's got a detailed map, drawn from memory, based on his future journey through the labyrinth. The others aren't convinced. From their perspective, Kyle probably bought a fake map from some shady vendor. Feeling a little bad, Urza jumps in and claims the paper is made from 1,000-year-old magic tree bark. Totally rare, totally legit. Of course, Kyle knows that's complete nonsense. He pulled it out of some dusty library book, but everyone believes Urza, not him. Still, even with a map, getting through the labyrinth would take forever. So Kyle proposes a new strategy: dig a tunnel. Yes, dig a tunnel. They start right away. This way, they can avoid all the deadly sawblade traps scattered inside. With Urza summoning an earth spirit to reinforce the tunnel, things go pretty smoothly. She even seems unusually motivated, barking at Kyle and Theren to work harder. After a long day of digging, they return to camp, where Layla has whipped up a feast. Everyone loves it. When Urza compliments her, she casually asks if Layla caught the bear they're eating. Turns out, yeah, she did, with her bare fists. Completely normal for her. After dinner, Urza uses spirit magic to create a hot spring in the mountain. She and Layla go for a relaxing soak, while Kyle has to physically restrain Theren from trying to peek over the wall. The next day, work resumes. While the others take a break, Urza pulls Kyle aside and demands answers. Why does he want to be a hero so badly? She knows the others haven't asked out of trust, but she doesn't trust him, especially after he used her true name. She's watched Kyle work nonstop, wearing weight-enhancing rings that make his body 9 times heavier than normal, yet he never complains. Clearly, there's more to this than wanting fame or glory. Just as Kyle is about to answer, his shovel hits something, a vault wall. He cuts her off and tells her to get the others. Once everyone gathers, Kyle kicks the wall down, revealing an enormous mountain of gold and treasure. Theren practically dives into the pile, convinced he'll never have to work again. Meanwhile, Kyle quietly slips away. There's a different treasure he's after, hidden deeper in the labyrinth. He finds his way to a secret chamber where an ancient, legendary sword awaits. One that accompanied him through countless battles in the future. As he steps closer, the sword's avatar materializes before him. Sylvia begins her grand speech, congratulating Kyle for conquering the labyrinth trials, but Kyle immediately clamps her mouth shut. He really doesn't want his friends finding out about her just yet. Sylvia, clearly offended, starts yelling about being disrespected, but Kyle just needs her to zip it for a second. Once she calms down, Kyle admits he knows she's a replica of the Queen of Salonia, Sarles, and, well, he didn't actually clear the labyrinth properly. He just dug a shortcut straight to the end. Sylvia is shook that he cheated her labyrinth so effortlessly, but Kyle says, "Look, just let me take the final trial and you'll understand." That trial. Pulling the sword so Sylvia can read his memories. As she scans them, she witnesses all the tragedy of the future, from the Demon Lord's reign of terror to the point where Kyle touches the divine dragon's heart and rewinds time. She's stunned. She never imagined time magic could work on such a massive scale, but since she saw it herself, it must be true. Meanwhile, the others notice Kyle is missing and start looking for him. Panicking, Kyle tells Sylvia to just play along. So when his friends show up, Kyle waves the sword and loudly announces, "Hey guys, I found an intelligent sword." Later, Sylvia is happily munching on Leela's cookies, claiming it's been centuries since she tasted real food. Layla asks if she's really the magic queen, but Sylvia explains she's just a fragment of her, a magical life form meant to evaluate intruders. If she found them unworthy, boom, vault explosion. But Kyle's interesting, so they get a pass. She also tells them to take the treasure bag lying around. It's magically connected to the vault. With their loot secured, the group heads to the royal capital. While there, Sylvia keeps trying to sneak off to explore food stalls, but Theren keeps dragging her back before she wanders off. The real reason they're in the capital: to upgrade their gear. Kyle brings them to an exclusive weapons shop where the receptionist almost laughs them off until Kyle drops a fat stack of gold. Suddenly, VIP access unlocked. Inside, they meet the shop owner, Fespa, who offers to help them gear up. Sylvia spots some swords on display and instantly recognizes them as the work of Melanus, a famous ancient craftsman. Fespa is shocked she could tell, but Sylvia casually mentions she knew Melanus, though his work was just okay and he threw tantrums when criticized. Naturally, Kyle yanks her away before she outs herself as royalty. Fespa shows off some top-tier gear, including a set of dragon-scale armor with all kinds of resistance magic. Kyle loves it and buys it on the spot, leaving Fespa speechless. It is ridiculously expensive after all. Kyle offers to get matching armor for Theren, but Theren refuses. He's not into the twinning thing. The others pick their gear too: spirit bracelets, gauntlets for Layla, and some power-boosting armor for Theren, though sadly it does nothing for his charisma. Once shopping winds down, Kyle asks if Fespa has any magic stones. He shows them an explosion stone, great for combat, but Kyle wants something more suited for reptilian monsters. So Fespa presents a cold enchanted magic stone, exactly what Kyle needed. Lizards are weak to the cold, so these cold enchanted magic stones should be super effective against them. The only catch? They're expensive as heck because cold enchantments are hard to pull off. But Kyle doesn't even flinch. He just says, "I'll buy all the cold stones you've got." Oh, and while he's at it, he wants all of Fespa's healing potions too. Fespa is speechless. That would cost a fortune. But Kyle isn't here to haggle. Instead of coins, he casually drops a bag of gems worth 10 million coins and says, "Let's just call it even." After that, the gang leaves the shop, but Theren is nervous that people might start whispering about how rich they are. Last thing they need is fantasy IRS chasing them down. Kyle shrugs it off, saying they're leaving the capital tomorrow. This shocks the others, especially since it's Layla and Theren's first time here. So Theren dashes off to live his big city life while Urza offers to show Layla around. Meanwhile, Sylvia tries to sneak off for snacks, but Kyle drags her back to the inn. They need to talk. He asks if she really thinks the future can be changed. Sylvia scoffs. It was never set in stone. She figures that when Kyle used the dragon heart, it plucked his soul from one timeline and dropped it earlier in another. Since the dragon heart still exists in this timeline, his very presence is already altering things. But unless they act, the great invasion is still coming. Knowing this, Kyle is determined to save the world, but he's curious. If the heart exists in both timelines, why is there only one of him? Sylvia explains one of the most forbidden magics: soul fusion. Back in ancient Salonia, they discovered that fusing two souls could boost magic power, but experiments on infants ended in disaster. In Kyle's case, his future and past selves probably fused perfectly since they're the same person, doubling his magic power. He might even have potential for the highest forms of magic if he survives the side effects. Sylvia promises to guide him, but only if he reports any weirdness. Later that night, Layla and Urza return from sightseeing. Layla is ready to sleep, but Urza suddenly remembers tonight's the full moon. She needs to perform the contract ritual with Kyle before it's too late. She rushes to find him and sees him training with Sylvia in the forest. Kyle had totally forgotten, and though he's exhausted, he agrees. As Urza draws the contract circle, she thinks about how this ritual is a sacred thing in her village, like a wedding vow. She never imagined her first time doing it would be with a half-asleep human. She finishes the circle and yells at Kyle to wake up. He stumbles up, they stand in the circle, and he recalls how he and Urza did this in their married life from his previous timeline. So, after vowing not to misuse her true name, he seals the deal with a kiss. Urza is frozen, completely stunned, then shoves him back, fuming. "You don't kiss unless it's a marriage contract, idiot." Kyle is confused. He thought that's just how it works. Urza is not amused. The next morning, as they leave the capital, Layla notices how tired everyone looks. Kyle admits he and Urza were up handling some stuff, but Urza refuses to elaborate. Meanwhile, Theren was up all night trying and failing to get a girlfriend. Even being rich didn't help. They're headed to Arkan, but Kyle gives a vague excuse that Sylvia's prophetic abilities pointed them there. When they arrive, they coincidentally witness Princess Melina's parade through town. The kind, beloved princess waves to her people, but Kyle knows that in 2 days she's fated to die. Her caravan is supposed to head to Scenes, a village recently attacked by hydras. She wants to show support, but ends up getting killed by one. Kyle mutters that it's the result of bad decisions, visiting a monster-infested village. Not smart. Sylvia wonders if it was an assassination masked as a monster attack, and Kyle admits there were rumors that her brother, Prince Carr, was involved, but nothing was ever proven. Regardless, it's officially recorded as a tragic accident. But to Kyle, it's also an opportunity to save Molina and make himself a hero. Kyle says that if he wants to be recognized as a hero, he needs to make his entrance feel natural and heroic, like it just happened spontaneously, but, strategically. Just then, Theren bursts into the room, saying he couldn't find out anything about Princess Melina's schedule. Kyle asks him why he was even looking into that, and Theren, being the hopeless romantic he is, says he wants to rescue the princess, and maybe spark a little romance in the process. Kyle internally cringes, realizing this was also his own plan. How embarrassing. Theren tells him to back off because he called dibs on Melina first, but Kyle assures him he already has more romantic drama than he can handle. He drops the bomb that Melina is in actual danger, once again using Sildonia's prophetic powers as his cover story. Theren, ever the believer, immediately accepts this and declares he'll just follow the princess around like a loyal, if slightly creepy bodyguard. He's unusually confident in his ability to stalk women, which makes Kyle very nervous. Please, no sabotage today. The next day, as Melina's convoy leaves the town, Kyle and the gang hide in the bushes to observe. The girls wonder how they can follow the convoy without drawing attention, and Sildonia casually says, "I got this." Then she turns into a hawk. Everyone is stunned, and she explains that she's just a magical projection created from the gemstone embedded in Kyle's sword. Her body can shapeshift easily. She flies above the convoy, while the others watch everything through the gemstone's feed, like magical live streaming. Of course, the boys briefly get distracted, realizing this power could be every pervert's dream, until Sildonia yells at them to focus, because stuff's going sideways in the convoy. The drivers suddenly start attacking the guards, and Kyle knows it's time to intervene. By the time he arrives, the traitors have defeated the guards and started a monster summoning ritual. But before they can finish, Kyle blitzes them with a speed buff and knocks them out cold. He ties up the baddies for later interrogation, just in case they know something useful. Meanwhile, Theren checks on Melina. She's unconscious, but alive. Just then, a hyena monster pounces at him, but he slices it down swiftly. Unfortunately, more hyenas surround the carriage, and things are heating up fast. The hyenas begin attacking the unconscious guards. Kyle asks Theren to drive the carriage to safety, but the reins are cut. Theren needs to tie them back together to move. And just when it couldn't get worse, a hydra starts approaching. Kyle feels the earth rumbling with its arrival and tells everyone their top priority is keeping Melina safe. He asks Theren and the girls to get her out of there, while he stays behind to stall the hydra. The girls protest, but Kyle insists it's not reckless. He actually has a shot at winning. Urza decides to trust him, and Kyle runs off to face the monster. Sildonia asks if he's seriously planning to solo a hydra, and Kyle says it depends on how many heads it has. He's confident he can handle a 3-headed one. Then the hydra appears. It has 8 heads. Kyle momentarily forgets how to count and nearly pees his pants. But hey, too late to back down now. He dodges the initial attacks with ease. When the hydra breathes poison gas, he shields himself with his enchanted robe. The gas instantly withers nearby plants, but Kyle's high-quality gear keeps him safe. He pulls out a blizzard magic stone from his bag and hurls it at the monster. The cold freezes the hydra in place. Then he follows up with an explosion stone, blasting a chunk of its scaly body open. Seeing the opportunity, Kyle dashes in, blocks another poison breath with his robe, and slices off one of the hydra's heads. Unfortunately, it grows right back, faster than a bad haircut. He keeps trying the same head-chopping strategy, with increasingly desperate energy, but the hydra just won't stay down. And to make it worse, he's now out of blizzard stones. With the situation getting dire, Kyle goes for his final move. He activates his super speed skill, dashes toward the hydra, and hides an explosion stone in his hand, preparing for his last-ditch gambit. The hydra isn't fast enough to react, and Kyle charges straight through its chest like a magical bullet. He tears the wound open even wider and, with dramatic flair, shoves a bunch of activated explosion stones inside the monster's body. Just as he's about to make a heroic exit, the hydra smacks him away like yesterday's leftovers. Battered and bruised, Kyle somehow drags himself to his feet. The hydra, now severely annoyed, starts stomping toward him like it means business. But then, boom, the explosion stones go off all at once, blowing the beast to kingdom come from 3 different directions. The dramatic blast is so extra, it feels like something straight out of an Indian TV soap opera. Chunks of the hydra are scattered everywhere like meat confetti. Sildonia casually remarks that he could have done that earlier and saved a few magic stones. Kyle, still catching his breath, says that it was a last-ditch move and way too risky to use regularly. Still, he's just glad he managed to beat such a powerful monster. Meanwhile, Urza and the others have taken care of their own share of beasties and rush over to support Kyle. But he walks up just then, casually claiming, yeah, that hydra was tough, but not that tough. The girls are momentarily impressed until they catch a whiff. They all clutch their noses and inform Kyle that he reeks of grilled hydra meat and should definitely take a bath before standing anywhere near them. Kyle is heartbroken. He expected praise and maybe a fan club, but instead, he gets told to scrub off the monster's smell. So, after the bath, he goes. Meanwhile, Theren is still busy making the carriage usable. Princess Melina and her servants remain unconscious, and Kyle suspects they've been poisoned. He tells the girls to administer antidotes, just in case. Then Theren hands him a pouch he found nearby. Kyle instantly recognizes it. It's a monster summoning pouch. This wasn't a random attack. It was a staged assassination attempt disguised as a monster ambush. Turns out, Prince Kais is behind the assassination plot, and worse, Zentos, Melina's own bodyguard, is working with him. When news of the failed attempt reaches them, Zentos decides to send a backup squad to finish the job. Back in the forest, evening has arrived. Melina finally regains consciousness and is in complete disbelief that she's still alive. Urza tells her to stay calm. Melina, clearly shaken, says she didn't think she'd ever wake up again. She asks if Kyle and his team saved her, and of course, Theren immediately jumps in to take all the credit. One well-aimed sucker punch from Lee's knocks him out cold. Kyle steps in to formally introduce himself and explains that they're a group of traveling adventurers who happened to witness the attack and rushed in to help. Just then, Melina's maid wakes up and immediately gets defensive, stepping between Melina and Kyle like a mother bear with trust issues. Melina, however, assures her that Kyle and his friends saved them and they're trustworthy. She gets up and surveys the battlefield, but she's no delicate princess anymore. She switches to full-on inspection mode, going over the dead drivers. Kyle tells her the traitors were already killing the guards by the time he arrived. That's when Sildonia interrupts, saying a squad of royal knights is heading their way. Kyle relays the news to Melina, who immediately panics. They have to run now. If the royal knights find them, she says, they'll kill not just her, but Kyle and his friends too. Kyle is confused. Why would her own people want her dead? She drops the bomb. It's Zentos. He's the one pulling the strings. Kyle is stunned. He finds it hard to believe that Zentos, her trusted bodyguard, could be behind such betrayal, but Melina is certain. She orders her maid, Arca, to burn all the bodies at the scene, so the knights waste time trying to identify her among them. Every second counts. They prepare the carriage for escape. Melina asks Kyle and his group to accompany her so she can explain everything along the way. Ever the helpful idiot, Theren tosses the monster summoning pouch into the flames too, figuring that if more monsters get summoned, it might stall the knights even further. Because when you're running from assassins, what's a few extra monsters for chaos? Kyle asks Melina if she's absolutely certain that Zentos is behind this. Melina, visibly annoyed, replies that she knows exactly what she heard. Yesterday, she got drugged, courtesy of the prince and Zentos. Right before passing out, she overheard her own brother celebrating like he'd won a lottery. Turns out she had fallen right into their trap. Now, all he had to do was stuff her into a carriage bound for Sains, claims she left on her own, despite the danger, and voila, monster chow. She always knew her brother was a greedy idiot, but she never thought of him as an actual threat because, well, he's kind of useless. But with Zentos on his team, that changes things. Normally, Melina would be escorted by Killen from the 5th Battalion for protection, but Killen is practically a celebrity now, always getting summoned to royal ceremonies. So this time, guess who got assigned to protect Melina? Yep, Zentos himself. In hindsight, she probably should have raised an eyebrow the moment her brother showed up for the trip. He had zero reason to be there. Kyle still finds it hard to believe Zentos would stoop to something so low. But he knows Melina isn't the type to lie. So if she says Zentos is the villain, then that's that. He reasons that since the assassination attempt failed, Zentos will likely launch Plan B soon. And knowing the guy, he's probably already drafting the press release blaming Kyle and his party for massacring Melina's guards to get to her. If they wanted to play it smart and selfish, they just ditch Melina and save their own skins. But that ship has sailed. She promises them a generous reward once they make it back to the royal capital safely, so hey, silver linings. The good news? Killen's 5th Battalion is supposed to arrive in Arkine by tomorrow morning. And when they realize Melina's missing, you can bet Killen will come charging in to find her. Kyle wonders if things will go south if Killen's and Zentos battalions cross paths, but Melina says the two groups are roughly equal in strength. If anything, that might give Zentos a headache, not them. Lus suggests they could just lay low in Sains until the drama blows over, but Kyle isn't sold. Zentos seems like the kind of guy who would burn down a whole village just to clean up a loose end. And considering he already killed royal guards to reach Melina, it's not a stretch to think he'd do the same to 100 innocent villagers. Risky or not, Kyle thinks their best shot is to head back to Arkine. With over 10,000 people in the city, there's no way Zentos can't just go full villain without attracting attention. Plus, if they link up with Killen's battalion, their survival odds just might go up from nope to maybe. Melina agrees with Kyle's plan, but there's a catch. If they turn back now, they'll bump right into Zentos' men. So, she looks at him and asks, "You got a sneaky little plan to slip past them." But Kyle, ever the cool cucumber, calmly replies that he's planning to cut straight through Zentos soldiers. No detours, no subtlety, just boom. They halt the carriage to prep for the madness. Thanks to Sildonia's aerial surveillance, they confirm that Zentos isn't with the battalion Big Relief. That means they just need to deal with the regular troops. And lucky for everyone, Kyle already has a plan, though it includes a lot of explosion stones, kaboom style. Now, there's a minor issue. They can't guarantee that Melina won't get hurt by the shockwaves. So, Lise hands her a case of high-tire healing potions and says, "Drink one if you even stub a toe." Melina, a little stunned, wonders just how loaded these guys are. All this gear must have cost a fortune, and it did. But apparently, money's not a problem when you're traveling with Kyle. Meanwhile, back at the capital, the prince is absolutely losing it. The assassination attempt on the princess failed, and now he's panicking like a student on exam day. Zentos reassures him that he's already sent men to finish the job, but the prince wants to know, why aren't you out there with your troops? Zentos explains that Killen will be arriving tomorrow morning, and once she realizes the princess is MIA, she's going to grill the prince like a suspicious mother. Unfortunately, the prince crumbles under pressure faster than a house of cards, so Zentos has to stick around and come up with an excuse for him. The prince tries to protest but is quickly reminded he's now deep in this plan and Zentos won't tolerate another screw-up. Meanwhile, as Melina's carriage is still on the run, one of Zentos' scouts races back and reports, "I saw the carriage turn around, it's headed this way." The vice commander quickly orders everyone to halt and ready their bows. But just as the carriage comes into view, boom, a bunch of explosion stones rain down from the sky. Yep, this was a well-timed aerial strike, coordinated with Sildonia. The chaos disorients the soldiers, and the carriage blazes straight through like a bat out of hell. Urza uses wind magic to protect the carriage from the blast, while Theren, having the time of his life, chucks explosion stones like he's in some magical dodgeball tournament. Not exactly graceful, but hey, it gets the job done. However, once the vice commander shakes off the dust, he shouts at the remaining soldiers to get back on their feet and continue the chase. The team's not out of the woods yet. They've got to keep moving if they want to stay free. Unfortunately, due to all the explosions, one of the carriage wheels gets blown clean off. There's no way they'll fix it in time, so the group has no choice but to ditch it and continue without. Lise tells Princess Melina and her maids to hop on the horses, while Kyle plans to use a windwalker spell to keep up on foot. The bad news? There's zero chance they'll outrun the remaining soldiers like this. Kyle says someone needs to stay behind and act as a decoy. That's someone. Theren. He's busy fiddling with the broken carriage, hoping he can fix it, until Kyle casually tells him it's his job now to stall the royal guards. Before Theren can even grumble and protest, the rest of the crew is already leaving. Soon after, the soldiers catch up to Theren, who greets them with a white flag and the acting chops of a desperate soap opera villain. He starts begging for forgiveness, claiming it was all Kyle's idea and that he was abandoned. He even offers them a giant bag of gold in exchange for his life. But the vice commander quickly realizes Princess Melina isn't with him anymore and coldly orders the troops to kill Theren so they can move on. Meanwhile, Urza asks Kyle if it was really okay to leave Theren behind, since those soldiers definitely aren't planning to spare him. Kyle admits he would have preferred a bloodless option, but this was the only way. Urza, still shocked, questions whether Kyle really just sacrificed his best friend, but Kyle clarifies that's not what happened. Urza only just met Theren, so she wouldn't know, but Theren is way stronger than either Kyle or Lise. Meanwhile, back on the battlefield, plot twist. Theren beheads the vice commander in one clean strike. Turns out his groveling surrender was all an act to catch the guards off guard. Now that they're rattled, he removes his heavy gravity training bracelets and readies himself for a 1v30 showdown. He charges forward and instantly decapitates 3 soldiers, then darts back in to repeat the process. A few try to sneak up behind him. Rookie mistake. He tosses an explosion stone at their feet, blowing them skyward and scaring off the horses. Now the soldiers are stuck. No escape. Kyle explains to Urza that Theren may lack magic aptitude and have the personality of a circus clown, but when it comes to swordplay, Kyle can't even compare. Theren trains relentlessly and wears gravity bracelets nonstop to push his limits. And yes, he's also terrifying in battle. So why act so goofy all the time? Urza wonders. Well, that's part of the act, to make enemies underestimate him. That said, he's still kind of a weirdo regardless. Kyle is confident Theren will win, but against 30 royal guards, he'll need to go full lethal mode. They wanted to avoid unnecessary deaths, since the soldiers are just following orders. But war doesn't always leave room for mercy. After several intense minutes of fighting, only 8 soldiers remain, and Theren is getting tired. He drops his sword and tells the survivors they don't need to fight anymore. His mission, to buy time for Kyle and the others to reach Arkan, is complete. He even offers to let them go if they leave peacefully. The soldiers hesitate. They're bruised, battered, and frankly, not paid enough to deal with this. So they gather their wounded comrades and begin limping away, until Theren, true to his ruthless rep, throws another explosion stone and charges in to eliminate the survivors anyway. Brutal? Yes. Unnecessary? Probably. In character for Theren? Absolutely. Meanwhile, back in Arkan, Zentos realizes something's wrong. He hasn't received a single update from his men. Suspicious. He decides to investigate personally, leaving a few troops to babysit the prince while he rides off into the forest. High above, Sildonia spots Zentos heading toward the group and immediately alerts Kyle. Big scary night incoming. Unfortunately, Zentos spots her too and blasts her out of the sky with alarming precision. Yep, it's definitely him. Kyle, now certain who they're dealing with, tells Melina to hide in the woods. He also asks Urza and Theren to take her and flee if anything feels off. Melina asks if Kyle is really planning to fight Zentos, the strongest knight in Zergus, alone. Kyle admits he would have rather avoided this fight, but he doesn't have a choice. Melina, curious, asks why he keeps talking about Zentos like he knows him personally. Is there something he's not telling her? Kyle freezes, unsure what to say. Thankfully, Melina drops it, not wanting to pressure the guy risking his life for her. Later, Zentos finds Kyle standing alone in the forest road. He asks if Kyle has been aiding Melina, and Kyle calmly confirms it. He then asks why Zentos came alone. Why not bring his battalion? Zentos explains he didn't want more men dying in a battle they didn't sign up for. That earns him a sliver of respect. Kyle, still hoping to avoid bloodshed, offers Zentos a pardon from the princess if he surrenders, and begs him to explain why he's doing all this. He doesn't believe Zentos is the type to be motivated by status or gold. But Zentos isn't in the mood for monologues. No point explaining anything to someone who's about to die, he says, drawing his sword. Both men cast strength and haste spells, then charge. Zentos opens with his signature illusion magic, but Kyle dodges and counterattacks, forcing Zentos to retreat. Shocked, Zentos stares him down. No one's ever countered that spell on the first try. That's when it hits him. Kyle knows this technique because in the previous timeline, Zentos was the one who taught him everything he knows about magic swordsmanship. The fight continues, but there isn't much Kyle can do. At this point, Zentos is superior in every way. Zentos fires several magic bullets, and while Kyle is busy deflecting them, Zentos goes for a sneak attack. Kyle reacts just in time, leaping off his sword to save himself. He tosses an explosion stone mid-air at Zentos, but Zentos simply bats it right back, leaving Kyle with a face full of kaboom and a whole lot of pain. While Kyle is recovering from the blast, Zentos moves in to finish him. But again, Kyle manages to parry the strike. This time, when their blades clash, Zentos' sword starts to crack. Turns out Kyle's sword has better durability stats. Who knew sword durability mattered so much? Zentos backs off, and Kyle, ever the softy for his old friend, asks him once more to surrender. But Zentos is stubborn. He's already made his choice and isn't turning back now. Realizing his time is short, Zentos charges in for one last all-or-nothing strike. He parries Kyle's blade, leaving him wide open for a killing blow. But when Zentos swings down his sword, surprise, it shatters on impact. Kyle had hidden a dragon tear in his armor, and that thing is basically indestructible plot armor. Even so, Zentos, now wielding what's basically a sharp stick, still refuses to give up and tries to stab Kyle with the broken blade. But Kyle has recovered by now and brings his sword down to end the fight. Just before the final blow lands, Kyle has a flashback to his previous timeline. After a long day of training, Zentos once confided in him. He'd always served the royal family with pride. Even though the king of Zergus wasn't exactly a 5-star monarch, Zentos stayed loyal. But after the fall of Zergus, he'd finally felt free. Back in the present, with tears in his eyes, Kyle slashes Zentos across the chest, a fatal but not beheading blow. As Zentos drops to his knees, he asks why Kyle didn't go for the head. Kyle simply says he couldn't do that to an old friend. Still, a slash to the chest isn't exactly a love tap, and Zentos dies shortly after. Though victorious, Kyle is devastated. He had hoped to save everyone he cared about. Zentos was one of them. Meanwhile, back at the castle, the prince is pacing like a nervous squirrel, wondering why Zentos hasn't reported back. Then the doors burst open. The prince brightens. Finally, good news? Nope. It's his sister, Melina, alive, well, and looking very ready to ruin his day. She orders Killen to seize her brother on suspicion of treason and attempted assassination, with permission to use a persuasive amount of force. As she walks off, the sounds of the prince getting smacked around echo through the hall. Very satisfying. Melina turns to Kyle and his crew, thanking them for saving her life. To show her gratitude, she invites them to the royal capital for a proper thank you feast. Upon arrival, they're treated like heroes. Lise and Urza are dazzled by the castle's grandeur, while Sidonia is practically vibrating with joy over the dessert table. She dives in like it's her last meal. Theren, naturally, is off in a corner flirting with one of the maids like he didn't just solo 30 guys a few scenes ago. Kyle apologizes for the group's utter lack of decorum, but Melina is too grateful to care. Just then, her father enters. She runs to hug him, and the others realize, oh no, this is the king. They scramble to show respect, but he waves it off. Right now, he's not a king. He's just a dad who's thankful his daughter is still alive. The king expresses disappointment that Prince Kins would do something so disgraceful. But what really confuses him is why Zentos would help with such a plan. Melina hasn't figured it out either, though she suspects that another nation, or maybe even demons, were involved somehow. But without evidence, it's all just speculation. The king warns Kyle and his crew not to breathe a word of this to anyone. Kyle promises none of them would ever do anything to damage the reputation of Zergus, and Melina backs him up, assuring her father they can be trusted. He reluctantly agrees. Soon, the official story is released to the public. Melina and Kins were attacked by monsters on their way to Sains, and many royal soldiers were slain. Fortunately, Kyle and his team saved Melina, and Kins escaped with a few minor facial injuries. He'll be recovering in another country for a while, which is a fancy way of saying we're hiding him from public disgrace. Later, it's time for the royal award ceremony. The king presents Kyle and his team with the Saint's Medal, officially recognizing their heroism. This day marks the first appearance of the hero, and the first step of Kyle's plan is finally complete. But there's still one more piece on the board. That night, the king sits alone in his chamber, drowning his frustration in wine and muttering curses at Kins and Zentos for being utterly useless. Now, with no other heirs he trusts, he may have to give the throne to Melina, and she'll probably become a far better ruler than he ever was. A terrifying thought for a man who can't stand the idea of being outshined by his own daughter. So naturally, he starts plotting her assassination again. But as soon as he says the words out loud, he's grabbed from behind by Kyle. Kyle always knew King Romanus was a weak ruler, but he hadn't realized he was this rotten. In the previous timeline, during the demon invasion, Kyle had once suggested aiding the dwarves in the neighboring kingdom to build strategic alliances. But instead, Romanus saw it as a golden opportunity to blackmail the dwarves for favors. He delayed support until it was too late, one of many idiotic moves that led to Zergus's downfall. Originally, Kyle didn't plan to judge Romanus for mistakes he hadn't committed yet, but after hearing Zentos confess he failed to complete Romanus' mission, it all clicked. Zentos, ever the loyal knight, could only have been ordered by the king himself to assassinate Melina, a mission he likely didn't even want to fulfill. So now, Kyle drags Romanus out onto the balcony. But instead of begging, the king doubles down and snarls that everything would have worked out if Melina had just died. That kind of thinking is exactly why Kyle loathes him. Zentos' only crime was being loyal to a fool. Kyle pushes the king off the balcony, no hesitation, no regrets. He makes sure to leave no trace of his presence. When the guards investigate, they chalk it up to a tragic accident. The king must have gotten drunk and taken a royal nosedive. But of course, that story's not going to the press. The official cause of death? A sudden heart attack in his sleep. How convenient. The next day, the gang is having lunch in the city. Everyone's heard the news by now. Urza finds it suspicious that the king just happened to die the day after the award ceremony. Theren, true to form, only cares that the king didn't die before the ceremony. Now that would have been inconvenient. Kyle, meanwhile, is having a private conversation with Melina. She informs him she's engaged to the third prince of the Gargan Empire. This is the first Kyle is hearing of it. Apparently, Zergus and Gargan had been in conflict over the region of Karen, and a deal was struck. Zergus would gain control of Karen, but in exchange, Melina would marry into the Gargan royal family. Now, however, Melina is reconsidering the engagement. It's just not a good time to be planning weddings, what with the political chaos and attempted murders. Kyle asks what will happen to Karen if the marriage is called off. She assures him that Karen will remain a vassal state of Zergus. Officially, the engagement and governance are unrelated. She'll simply tell Gargan that circumstances have changed. Bureaucracy for the win. She then asks Kyle to personally go inform the governor of Karen on her behalf, since she's a bit busy with the whole running a kingdom thing. Later that night, Kyle is deep in thought when Sildonia strolls over and asks him what's on his mind. He admits he's unsure how Gargan will react to Melina calling off the engagement, which makes it hard to plan the next move. One problem's solved, but new ones are just getting started. Sildonia notices that Kyle is clearly worried, but she thinks he's missing something important, like the fact that Karen might be in serious trouble right now. It's just speculation, but even though the king of Zergus is dead, the governor of Karen hasn't made any kind of appearance. That's suspicious. And the fact that Melina hasn't brought it up at all, even more suspicious. She probably knows what's happening over there and is sending Kyle in the hopes that he'll sort it out for her. If that's the case, Kyle doesn't mind going to Karen, and, honestly, he'd like to put some distance between himself and Melina anyway, just for peace of mind. The next day, Kyle meets with Melina to formally accept the mission. But, just as he's about to leave, she suddenly drops a bomb. "Hey, would you like to become my personal knight?" Kyle is stunned. That's not exactly a casual request. But Melina insists she really wants him by her side, and naming him her knight seems like the obvious move. But Kyle, being a hero of the people type, isn't ready to tie himself down to one nation, especially not to Melina, who's always scheming. He tries to politely decline, saying he has other important things to do. Then she starts laughing. Turns out she was joking the entire time, just wanted to see how he'd react. Kyle, realizing he got completely played, is not amused. As Kyle and the group are leaving, Melina watches from her balcony. Melina's attendant Ninos comes to check on her and teasingly asks if she managed to make Kyle fall for her. Melina laughs and says she's not cruel enough to toy with someone's heart, at least not right now, maybe later. For now, she's just happy to have Kyle on her side, since she's going to need all the help she can get now that she's ruling Zergus. Meanwhile, Kyle and company make a pit stop at Vespa's shop to restock supplies and repair their gear. Vespa congratulates Kyle on receiving the Saint's Medal and says he's sure Kyle will be achieving even bigger things soon. On that note, Kyle mentions they're heading to Theren and asks if Vespa knows anything about the place. Though he knows things. Apparently, the situation in Theren is pretty bad. The Blacksmith Guild has basically taken over the region, and they're making life difficult for everyone, especially traders. But despite all the chaos, the weapons crafted in Theren are top-notch. If they're lucky, the group might score some excellent new gear. Kyle, already thinking ahead, figures it's the perfect time to get a new sword. And so, the group sets off on their journey to the vassal state of Theren, prepared for whatever political blacksmith-powered chaos awaits. The group finally arrives at the mining city of Theren, and wow, it lives up to the hype. The entire place looks like it's carved into a mountain. But then Sildonia casually drops a history bomb. The city was here first, the mountain came later. Back when the city was founded, the land was flat. Then someone discovered rich ore veins underground, and the people decided, why dig down when we can just shove the earth up with magic? So they literally pushed the land into the sky and created a mountain around the city. Problem solved, mountain created, mining profits secured. Before anyone can fully process how ridiculous that is, something flies overhead. The group looks up and spots none other than the Wyvern Knights of the Gargan Empire. Sildonia is impressed. Taming wyverns is no small feat. Kyle, however, is a lot less impressed and a lot more concerned. Cool dragons and all, but why are they here? Hopefully, not because of us. After entering the city and showing their identification, Kyle asks to see the ambassador of Zergus. While the guards check their credentials, the rest of the group explores the city. Urza seems twitchy. Turns out elves and dwarves don't exactly get along. Centuries of passive-aggressive tree versus rock arguments will do that. Soon enough, the ambassador arrives. She introduces herself as Miranda, and Kyle practically freezes. He knows her from the previous timeline. The fact that she's working as an ambassador this early catches him completely off guard. Layla notices him staring like a lovesick idiot and gives him a sharp snap back to reality. Kyle, flustered, quickly explains they're here to deliver a message from Queen Melina. Miranda invites them inside. After reading the official documents, she confirms everything is legit, though she admits these are the strangest looking envoys she's ever seen. Still, given the chaos back in Zergus, especially under Melina's rule, she isn't that surprised. She also takes a moment to thank Kyle's group personally. Melina is one of her close friends, and if they hadn't saved her life, Miranda would have been devastated. Then business resumes. They want to meet Governor Bax of the Gargan Empire. Unfortunately, he's been sick in bed for weeks. Even Miranda hasn't been able to see him. Every time she tries, she's told he isn't accepting visitors, which is suspicious, since as governor, he has to meet envoys from the queen. But now that Kyle's crew is here, he'll be forced to show his face. Still, when Miranda escorts them outside, Kyle notices she's brought way too many guards for what's supposed to be a simple diplomatic visit. Definitely not normal. Meanwhile, Theren, seeing nothing exciting about sitting through political chit-chat, casually announces he's gonna do his own thing and slips away from the group. Kyle doesn't mind Theren wandering off, but he tells him to be back before nightfall. The rest of the group heads toward the Gargan embassy, where Miranda gives a quick warning. Once they step onto Gargan soil as representatives of Zergus, they'll lose all freedom to interfere. In short, smile, nod, and don't start any wars. Right on cue, the Gargan ambassador shows up. The tension between him and Miranda is so thick you could cut it with Theren's non-existent new sword. They're forced to fake smiles while throwing daggers with their eyes, because one wrong word could spark an international incident. Along with the ambassador appears a rather important figure, Alzard Vine, the second highest sorcerer of the Gargan Empire. He introduces himself politely, but when he notices Kyle, he looks curious. After hearing Kyle is here as an emissary of Queen Melina, he quickly puts two and two together. "You must be the famous hero who saved Melina," Alzard says. Turns out he even knew Kyle's mother back in the day. They were classmates and magic research buddies. He extends his hand with a friendly smile. Kyle, suspicious but not rude, accepts the handshake. Outwardly, Alzard seems charming, but that sly glint in his eyes screams, "I definitely have ulterior motives." Both groups then head toward the governor's estate, but just like last time, they're stopped at the door. Governor Bax refuses visitors. Again, Miranda loses her cool. For 2 months, she's been stonewalled with the same excuse, and her patience has officially run out. The guard, sweating bullets, insists he's only doing his job but promises to pass the message along. Miranda gives an ultimatum. If Bax doesn't shape up within 2 days, she'll personally appoint a new governor. For now, she tells Alzard that the meeting isn't happening. He seems disappointed, a little too disappointed. He backs off surprisingly easily, which makes Miranda even more suspicious. She's convinced Alzard already knew about Melina calling off the engagement. The Empire probably sent him to pressure the governor into siding with them and, at the same time, cozy up to Kyle, the rising hero. So she warns Kyle not to fall for Alzard's smooth talk. In fact, Miranda already has a candidate in mind for the new governorship, a former blacksmith guild member, arguably the best blacksmith in all of Theren, and someone who won't spend his career hiding under the covers. Meanwhile, Theren is exploring the city, disappointed that none of the swords catch his eye. Worse, the mining town is severely lacking in one of his favorite things, women to flirt with. Just as he's about to give up, he hears a scream. He rushes over and sees a cute girl being harassed by a group of thugs. Without hesitation, he kicks one in the face and introduces himself like a gallant hero. Except, plot twist. The girl is actually Go, a boy. The moment Theren realizes his mistake, he collapses to the ground in melodramatic despair. Rookie mistake, how could I? His interest plummets instantly, so much so that he starts to walk away, declaring he's not about to waste energy saving a guy. Go, shocked, calls after him. "You're seriously just leaving me here because I'm a dude?" Theren, dead serious, says, "Correct." But after a few steps, he pauses and turns back. "Wait, do you have a sister who looks as cute as you?" Go admits he does. Suddenly, Theren's heroic spirit reignites like wildfire. With renewed motivation and the thought of a date in the future, he proceeds to pummel every thug into unconsciousness. Go is impressed. He had fully planned to bolt while Theren distracted the thugs, but he didn't expect him to knock out every last one of them. Either way, he thanks Theren and introduces himself as a local artificer. Theren is surprised someone as young as Go can make magical items, but he brushes it aside and asks why the thugs were after him. Sheepishly, Go admits they were debt collectors. At first, Theren assumes it's the classic gambling-addicted parents situation. Nope. The debt is all Go's fault. He was commissioned to make a special artifact, took the payment up front, and then casually informed the client it would take 10 years to finish. Unsurprisingly, the client wasn't thrilled. Theren figures Go might have deserved a beating for that one, but morality isn't really his department. He's only here because of the promise of a date with Go's sister. Unfortunately, Go breaks the news. His sister is already married. Upon hearing this, Theren falls to his knees in despair, wailing like a man betrayed by fate. "Why didn't you say that earlier?" he cries. Go admits he withheld the truth because he feared Theren wouldn't help otherwise, which is fair because he wouldn't have. Furious at being tricked, Theren smacks Go on the head. Meanwhile, Miranda meets with the master blacksmith Gazas, trying to convince him to become the new governor. He immediately refuses. His passion is blacksmithing, and he has no intention of trading his hammer for politics. Miranda insists the city desperately needs leadership, but Gazas shakes his head. "Not my problem." While Miranda argues with him, Kyle and the others wait in the corridor. That's when Theren and Go show up. To Kyle's surprise, Go turns out to be Gazas' son and a talented craftsman in his own right. If all goes well, maybe they can rope him into forging a new sword for Theren. Go invites everyone for tea. The place is a mess, and he apologizes. Apparently, his sister used to handle the chores, but ever since she got married and moved out a year ago, housekeeping has been a lost art. While waiting, Kyle spots schematics on the table. Curious, he examines them and nearly drops them in shock. Go explains the drawings are for the artifact he's working on, but Kyle recognizes it immediately, a golem design. In his past timeline, such a construct had been a game-changing weapon on the battlefield. And now, he realizes Go was the one who built it. This is no ordinary trinket. The technology to create autonomous magic items, like golems, was thought lost with ancient Serral. Toward the end of the Great Invasion, the Gargan Empire had fielded a prototype golem that outperformed entire squads of soldiers. Kyle calls Sildonia over to inspect the design. She's impressed. based on Titan constructs from the old Sarlis kingdom. The design is flawless, and Go even improved it for modern production. When Kyle asks if it could work, Sildonia says the odds are high. Excited, Kyle insists Go finish it as soon as possible. Go says it'll take 10 years. Kyle demands 1. He's willing to throw as much money at the project as needed. Go is thrilled but hesitant. He already has investors. Kyle shrugs and tells him to just refund their money and declare the project a failure. Problem solved. Once business with Go is settled, Kyle checks back on Miranda and Gazis. No luck. Gazis refuses to budge on becoming governor. After Miranda leaves, Kyle approaches him with a different request, a sword for Theren. Gazis immediately recognizes Theren's current weapon as the work of a deus, and he scoffs at the idea it's not good enough. Then Kyle shows him his own sword. Gazis goes pale. Even among all the ancient Sarlis blades he studied, only one could compare, and even that was inferior. Reluctantly, he admits he's not capable of forging something at that level. For now, he sends them away. Theren leaves disappointed, but Kyle notes that Gazis did mention seeing something like Sildonia before. They plan to return tomorrow. The next morning, Kyle gets an unexpected visitor, Alzard Vine. Not on official business, but for a friendly chat. He even offers Kyle a ride on one of the Empire's wyverns, a shocking offer, since the technique is supposed to be a tightly guarded secret. But apparently, it was Kyle's mother who originally developed it, and Alzard admits he always admired her talent. Later that day, Kyle and Miranda accept Alzard's lunch invitation at the Gargan embassy. But as they approach the meeting room, Kyle suddenly feels a chill crawl down his spine. He opens the door and finds Alzard's severed head on a plate. Standing over it is a demon. The western half of the continent has been under demon control for the last 3 centuries. In all that time, they haven't launched any invasions, so most human nations have grown complacent. Ordinary people wouldn't even recognize a demon if one stood in front of them, but Kyle would. Every detail of their appearance is burned into his memory. The demon opens her hand, sharp claws gleaming, and lunges at him. She intends to erase all witnesses. To her shock, Kyle doesn't dodge. He sacrifices his arm, letting her claws dig in and pin themselves. Then, while she's stuck, he slams his other fist into her gut with a burst of light magic. The demon staggers back, gasping, clearly not expecting resistance, let alone from a human this skilled. Kyle grins. I could do this all day. That's a lie. He doesn't have his armor, he's running low on mana, and his offensive abilities are limited to his fists because he left Sildonia at home. But the demon doesn't know that. She weighs her chances, decides it's not worth the risk, and dives out a window into the city. Later investigation reveals the truth. Alzard wasn't her only victim. Nearly half the officials in the Empire's embassy were slaughtered. Strangely, there were no screams, no sounds of struggle. It's as though the demon walked through the halls unseen, erasing lives in silence. Meanwhile, back at Goo's home, Sildonia is helping him with his golem research. With her first-hand knowledge of ancient tech, progress has skyrocketed. What would have taken him a month, he accomplished in a single day. He's amazed, but she insists he's just as impressive for learning so much so quickly. Later, during a break in the dining room, Go apologizes for making Lise handle all the cooking. She brushes it off. She's used to looking after Kyle and Theren anyway. But speaking of Kyle, Go realizes they haven't seen him all day. Lise asks if anyone knows where he went. Zaya explains that he's at lunch with one of the Empire's officials, which is precisely why the rest of them stayed behind. None of them like stuffy formal events. Theren groans in disappointment. The main reason they came today was to ask Gazis about the sword he mentioned yesterday, but he's been gone all day. So he turns to Go instead. Does he know anything? After thinking it over, Go recalls his father was likely referring to the holy sword Ran, forged in Karen 2,000 years ago by a dwarf hailed as the greatest smith of his age. It was said to be wielded by the hero Randolph when he slew the Demon King, a blade of legend. Even better, Go is fairly certain the sword is still in the city. His father once claimed to have seen it himself. That makes Theren's eyes light up. When he asks where it might be, Go guesses it's probably in the possession of Governor Baxel. Theren immediately starts scheming how to borrow it, but before he can outline a plan, he glances out the window and freezes. In a rare serious tone, he asks Go if anyone wants him dead. Aside from the investors he bailed on, Go can't think of anyone. That's when Theren explains, the house is surrounded. The men outside are radiating killing intent. They're not here for conversation. He grabs his sword. I'll handle most of them, but if anyone slips past, you'd better be ready. Go, not much of a fighter, asks how he can help. Before Theren can answer, Sildonia pulls him toward the back. Come with me. Hiding is the best help you can give. Outside, the attackers finish surrounding the house and prepare to force their way in. But before they can move, Theren casually kicks the front door off its hinges. The heavy wooden slab smashes into one of them, sending him flying across the yard. Oops, Theren says cheerfully, brushing dust from his shoulder. He turns to the one attacker left standing and points. You. Congratulations. You get to be the one we torture for answers. So don't worry, you're only getting knocked out for now. As for the rest of you, he flashes a grin. Hope you made funeral arrangements. He lunges forward, cutting through the attackers like a whirlwind. Meanwhile, two men sneak in through the back entrance, only to find Lise and Urza waiting. Urza quickly notices the faint green sheen on their blades. Poison, she warns. Even a scratch could paralyze us. Be careful. The next instant, Lise takes a deep breath, steps forward, and unleashes a barrage of punches that would have made Prime Mike Tyson proud. Her opponent crumples before he can even swing. As for Urza, her attacker tries to stab her. She calmly summons a water spirit, freezing the blade in midair, then lifts him off the ground. He thrashes helplessly as she slowly drowns him in a floating sphere of water until he blacks out. Both women go a little overboard, but their captives are still alive. They tie them up and wait for Theren's return. Watching all this go is both impressed and horrified. He silently decides it's probably best to keep his distance from the girls. A short while later, Theren comes back inside dragging a dazed man, the lucky chosen survivor. Good news, he says, tossing the prisoner on the floor. Now we can have ourselves a little chat. The captive refuses to speak at first. So Theren kneels down, voice dropping to a serious growl. Listen, pal, you really want to talk. Because if you don't, the girls behind me will. He spins a tale with absolute conviction. Lise, he explains, is a sadistic artist who can turn any household item into a torture device. Forks, ladles, even salt shakers. She'll cut you up piece by piece, then rub salt and hot sauce into the wounds. And when you're begging for death, Urza will keep you alive with healing magic, stretching your agony out for days. It's a total bluff, but Theren's performance is so intense the man breaks instantly. I'll talk. I'll tell you everything. He admits they were hired to kidnap Go. Theren isn't convinced. These guys were far too bloodthirsty for kidnappers. The prisoner quickly explains. Their employer told them they could kill anyone who resisted. Go then recalls recent reports of townsfolk vanishing, clearly connected to this group. Theren presses. And the missing people, where are they? The man swears he doesn't know. Their job was just to deliver the victims to an old abandoned house at the edge of town. After that, they never heard a word. Whoever's behind this must be powerful, Theren realizes, to keep everything hidden so cleanly. He leans in close. Then tell me, who hired you? The captive hesitates, then admits he has an idea of who it might be. But before he can finish, Theren suddenly shouts, "Everyone down!" A deafening explosion tears through the side of the house. The blast rocks the walls, splinters wood, and sends smoke and debris everywhere. Everyone survives except the prisoner, who's reduced to little more than ash. Coughing through the dust, Lise clenches her fists. I'll go hunt down the bastard who did this. Don't. Theren cuts her off sharply. His expression is deadly serious. They're still here. And I've never felt killing intent like this before. Sildonia narrows her eyes. You're not chasing them? Hell no. Theren mutters. I'm not interested in dying today. Whoever they are, they're way out of our league. Sildonia tells Theren he made the right call, not chasing the attacker, because that explosion was undoubtedly the work of a demon, and he wouldn't have stood a chance alone. Later that day, the group reunites with Kyle and relays everything that happened. The situation looks grim. Beyond the physical damage, Miranda can't ignore the political fallout. Since only the Empire's embassy was attacked, the Empire is almost certain to accuse the kingdom of working with demons. Kyle doesn't have to worry about being blamed. After all, he was the first to fight off the demon, but the timing couldn't be worse. Lise points out the obvious. Kyle saw a demon with his own eyes. But how can they be sure one was responsible for the explosion at Goo's house? Sildonia explains that such overwhelming raw destruction is unique to demons. With their massive mana reserves, they rarely bother refining their spells. They just brute force everything. Worst case scenario, she says, the demons could blow the entire city of Kuron off the map if they wanted. Kyle grits his teeth. He hates demons more than anyone in this room, but he also knows charging in blindly is suicide. For now, the priority should be to confirm whether Governor Bax is involved in the kidnappings. The group turns to Miranda. Did she know about the disappearances? Miranda admits guiltily that she only recently confirmed it was happening. She can't deny Bax might be involved, but she doesn't understand why he would allow such criminal activity in his own city. Just then, a guard bursts in. Governor Bax's mansion is on fire. By the time they arrive, the entire building is a roaring inferno reduced to rubble. Even the village idiot could tell this was no coincidence. Theren emerges from the wreckage, coughing, saying he's been trying to find the holy sword but has had no luck. Meanwhile, Miranda has been searching for Bax's body, but finds no trace, even though he was supposedly bedridden. Layla wonders aloud if demons caused the fire as well, but Kyle shakes his head. No. If demons were going to use arson, they would have torched the embassy too. This feels like Bax covering his tracks. If Bax really was the mastermind behind the kidnappings, then torching his own mansion makes perfect sense. Destroy all the evidence and vanish. Their first step is clear: they need to find Bax. Kyle can't help but notice how calm and composed Miranda remains despite everything. But then again, this is the same woman who, in the future, would keep the entire human army supplied and informed. It's impressive, but Kyle also notices cracks in her composure. Just then, Ghost suddenly appears. Everyone is shocked. He was supposed to stay behind with the guards for safety. Go apologizes, explaining that when he heard about the fire, he rushed over. Not for Bax. No, he's worried about Gazis, his father. Bax summoned Gazis to the mansion earlier that day, and he hasn't seen him since. The group is stunned. If Gazis was inside when the fire started, that would mean Bax targeted him specifically. After all, Gazis was a prime candidate to become the next governor. Miranda immediately breaks down, collapsing to her knees. "This is my fault," she sobs. "Gazis told me he didn't want the position, but I kept pushing it on him. And now he might be dead because of me." Kyle watches in silence, shocked by her reaction. He hadn't expected Miranda to be so distraught until he remembers something. A night from the previous timeline. He and Miranda had been drinking, and in her drunken haze, she confessed she once had a lover she cared about deeply. But because of her selfishness, he died. Now it clicks. That lover was Gazis. Later, while looking after Miranda, Kyle recalls another detail. That same night, after she drank herself unconscious, he had carried her back to her room. On the way, she muttered something about wishing she had found the secret underground passage sooner, because then, maybe, she could have saved Gazis. That memory is all Kyle needs. He grabs his gear and turns to the group. "I'm going back to Bax's mansion. There's something I need to check." The others, of course, refuse to let him go alone. Together, they set out for the ruins of Bax's estate, knowing full well they are walking straight into danger. So, Kyle gets his gear ready and tells everyone he's heading back to Governor Bax's mansion to investigate. Naturally, the rest of the gang agrees to tag along, because what's an ominous death trap without friends? On the way, Theren asks Kyle if he's really sure there's a secret passage. Kyle, brimming with confidence he doesn't actually have, assures him it definitely exists, somewhere, probably. Then Urza asks why he wanted her help specifically. Kyle calmly explains that he needs her to move tons of rubble with magic so they can find the entrance. Urza immediately stops in her tracks, squints at him, and basically says, "Excuse me? Did you just volunteer me for rock duty in this demolition site scavenger hunt?" Kyle, with all the seriousness of a man about to be punched, confirms that yes, he wants her to shovel magically. To sweeten the deal, he adds that he has plenty of mana potions to keep her going. Urza clenches her fist, resisting the urge to rearrange his face, and asks if he has ever actually tasted one. Kyle grimly nods. They do work wonders for restoring mana, but they taste like liquefied garbage mixed with regret. He understands why Urza doesn't want to chug them, but pleads with her anyway since it's their only chance to save Gazis. Even Lise and Theren join in asking her to reconsider. Cornered by sincere faces and peer pressure, Urza sighs, sacrifices her dignity and taste buds, grabs the box of potions, and stomps off to get started. Once she's gone, Kyle turns to Theren and asks if he's sure the demon who attacked Goo's house was male. Theren, with the confidence of a man whose expertise is oddly specific, admits he only caught a glimpse, but he knows the difference between a girl's butt and a guy's butt. That was definitely a guy. Since Kyle had faced a female demon at the embassy, that means there are at least 2 demons currently in Theren. Hours pass, and poor Urza is still forcing down those vile potions, while her summoned gnome shifts rubble. She looks like she's on the verge of throwing up, but her suffering pays off when the gnome uncovers a hidden trapdoor. Jackpot. This must be the secret passage Kyle was talking about. Yay, he was right for once. The group heads in, with Kyle warning everyone to stay sharp. There could be demons lurking. Theren, still shaken from earlier, admits the demon he fought was insanely strong, maybe even as scary as his mother when she's angry. Kyle agrees, adding that demons are physically stronger than humans, so comparing one to Theren's mom is fair, but also warns him not to let Layla find out he said that. She'd probably kill him twice for good measure. Urza grudgingly admits Kyle seems to know a lot about demons. He replies that they're dangerous enough to require that level of caution. Then, concerned about her drained mana and Lisa's inexperience, he suggests they shouldn't continue. Of course, both immediately get in his face and refuse. Urza especially, because after downing all those revolting potions, she's not leaving until this mission pays off. Kyle, realizing there's no winning this argument, decides to convince himself it'll all be fine. After all, he's got Theren with him. How bad could it be? Just then, Lee spots something at the end of the passage. They rush over and find a table with a corpse laid out on it. Kyle instantly recognizes what's happening here because he's seen it before. The others, however, are clueless. So Seldonia steps in to explain. This isn't just any corpse. This is the setup for a forbidden rite. Theren asks what's so forbidden about this ritual, and Seldonia explains. It's basically a magic scam that converts life force into pure mana. They look closer at the dried up body on the table. Seriously, the guy looks drier than a desert and deader than Kyle's social life, and realize it was actually Bax's head butler. As for the pile of corpses nearby, yep, those must be the poor souls who were kidnapped. That confirms it. Bax was definitely involved. Even with that revelation, Lee still doesn't get why someone would need so much mana that they drain innocent people like juice boxes. Seldonia examines the magic circle and explains it's designed to slowly squeeze energy out of victims like sponges. But the problem? The catalyst is weak. If overloaded, it'll backfire spectacularly and blow half the city sky high. As if half the city being vaporized wasn't bad enough, Kyle points out the scarier part. What kind of spell would need this much mana in the first place? Seldonia says she can analyze it to figure that out, but before she can start, she senses someone approaching. Everyone dives for cover like kids hiding during hide and seek. A moment later, two demons enter the room. Gainias is thrilled to see the ritual has finished draining the butler. Meanwhile, Yuriga just stands there in silence, which annoys him. He asks if it would kill her to actually talk since, in his opinion, he hasn't done anything wrong. Sure, they had to cut a deal with a human, but hey, everything worked out, right? Not convinced, Yuriga asks if bombing the embassy was part of the plan. Gainias insists that wasn't on him. Their human co-conspirator requested it. Same with blowing up that random house. It was just a diversion for a staged abduction. Besides, he proudly adds, he hasn't technically broken the rule about minimizing casualties. And in the end, it's all for the item their king wants. Yuriga understands but still fumes about working with filthy humans. After bickering like coworkers forced into a team project, they both leave. The group finally breathes again, relieved they weren't caught. Seldonia points out that its odd demons were told to minimize casualties. She's never heard of a demon king with a soft spot for humans. Kyle brushes it off, saying what matters is they gathered valuable intel. Now all that's left is finding Bax and Gazis. They head deeper into the cave and, weirdly enough, stumble into a room that looks more like a fancy furniture showroom than a lair of evil. By one of the chairs lies Gazis, tied up but alive. The group rushes over, relieved but also puzzled about who tied him up in the first place. That's when an old man's voice booms across the room, demanding to know who they are and how they got in. Enter Governor Bax, alive and cranky. Once he realizes they're emissaries from Zergus, he starts ranting about protecting Karen from both the Empire and the Kingdom at all costs. The group stares, baffled. Protect. This is the same guy who's been kidnapping townsfolk and sucking them dry like magical Capri Suns. Bax refuses to explain his true motive until Gazis finally speaks up. He reveals the truth. The Orain, mana supply, beneath Karen is about to run dry, and once it's gone, the entire city will lose everything. All the jobs in Karen would vanish overnight. The skilled craftsmen would pack up their tools, move elsewhere, and before long the city would likely get invaded. Bax wanted to stop that from happening, and at first Gazis was willing to help, but then Bax started rambling about sacrifices, and that's when the partnership nosedived. Sildonia takes one look at Bax, and immediately diagnoses him as terminally ill. Honestly, the man looks like he's held together by sheer stubbornness. It'd be a miracle if he survived another month. Kyle assumes the demons must have taken advantage of his frailty to rope him into a deal. But then, cue dramatic lighting, Ganius steps out of the shadows. Trick him, please, we just made a deal. Kyle asks what he means by deal, and of course Ganius seizes the opportunity to indulge in his favorite pastime, long-winded villain monologues. He explains that the city of Theren was originally founded when Orvanes were magically consolidated into the mountain. So naturally, the same kind of magic could be used to draw up more ores. That, he declares, was the purpose of the forbidden ritual. But demons aren't in the charity business. They wouldn't agree without something in return. And here comes the big reveal. What Ganius really wants is the Holy Sword. Yes, the Holy Sword, the blade that killed the former Demon King. Naturally, the current Demon King wants to claim it for himself. Call it a family heirloom upgrade. Kyle, realizing he can milk more info out of Ganius, acts like he had no idea the Holy Sword was even in Theren. He feigns shock, calls Ganius a genius, and generally inflates the demon's ego like a parade balloon. Thrilled, Ganius happily elaborates. He was originally on a simple reconnaissance mission, but when he discovered both the Holy Sword and Bax's worries, he swooped in with a proposition. Desperate, Bax signed on immediately. Before Ganius can reveal even more, Urigo arrives and cuts him off. Shut your mouth already? The party realizes the free info buffet is officially closed. Kyle draws his sword, ready for a fight. Ganius shrugs, sure, he may have overshared, but who cares, he'll just kill them all. Uriga objects, reminding him the Demon King gave strict orders to avoid excessive human casualties. But Ganius insists these humans already know too much, which totally isn't his fault, by the way. Only option, wipe them out. At this point, Bax panics. He shouts about their deal. He promised them the Holy Sword if they used magic to restore Karen's minds. Kyle sighs and tells him to stop being so naive. Come on, you really thought demons would honor a contract with a human? That's like trusting a fox to babysit your chickens. Ganius sneers. He claims he was going to use earth transformation magic to restore the minds, but since the catalyst is overloaded, it would probably just blow up the entire city instead, and frankly, he doesn't care. Of course, Ganius doesn't care what happens to the city. Why would he? He's got Demon King brownie points to earn. Bax, however, is floored. After all the sleepless nights, scheming, and sacrificing innocent people, now he learns the plan was basically a glorified oops, might blow up the city anyway. His shocked outburst doesn't help, so Theren promptly knocks him out cold and asks Gazas to keep an eye on him. Ganius, ever the multitasker, assigns battle partners like he's running a tournament bracket. Uriga, you handle Lee and Urza. I'll take care of Kyle and Theren. But when Kyle draws his sword, ready for a 2 versus 1, Theren casually bows out. Actually, I've got something else to do. Translation, good luck, buddy, don't die. Now Kyle is stuck soloing a magic spamming demon. Meanwhile, Uriga offers Lee and Urza a get out of jail free card. Walk away now, and I'll let you live. The two immediately suspect a trap, because, let's be real, when does a demon ever hand out mercy coupons? But shockingly, she's dead serious. Orders are orders, and hers are to minimize human casualties. Still, Lee and Urza aren't about to tuck tail, so they attack, and promptly get tossed around like ragdolls. Watching this, Sylvia nudges Theren and asks if he's going to help. He shrugs. Nah, they'll be fine. She's clearly holding back. Besides, free training, nothing like getting pummeled by a demon to boost your XP. But Theren isn't slacking. He hands Sildonia a crystal he swiped from Bax. She inspects it and confirms what he suspected. It's a concealment crystal, designed to hide the presence of a powerful item. Conveniently, Theren had noticed Bax's eyes darting toward a certain corner when the Holy Sword was mentioned. So, he smashes the crystal, and, poof, the concealment drops. Sure enough, something's hidden there. Theren strides over, slices through the illusion, and finds a box. He slashes it open, and his sword shatters. R.I.P. sword, you served well. But inside gleams the Holy Sword, and with that in hand, Theren can finally rejoin the fight. Meanwhile, poor Kyle has been stalling Ganius the whole time, dodging spells like it's a bullet hell video game.